Greetings. Welcome to Smart Values, Mindfulness, and Sobriety Journaling. How to help our clients use different tools to discover values, engage in mindfulness, and keep track of urges for an effective tool in planning and relapse prevention. This class is presented as a tool for clinicians to use for their clients over the course of several sessions or single sessions or individual sessions to help further relapse prevention skills. First off, an introduction. My name is John Good, CDPT, and student at Edmonds Community College. I'm in the final quarter of my Associates in Addiction Counseling. I currently work as a CDPT for Willapa Behavioral Health in Long Beach, Washington. I currently work with an IOP group Monday through Thursday evenings from 4 to 7 p.m. During this group, we perform personal check-ins, navigate through each member's Change Company My Personal Journal, and spend the last hour of group covering a variety of subjects which often center around relapse prevention. Most of the participants that I work with have some sort of external reporting requirements, whether that be Washington DOC, DSHS, CPS, or various probationary court situations. Within this population, ambivalence can be a significant issue. However, many of the participants also lack any foundation of relapse prevention skills, so lapse and relapse can be a very common issue. So, for an overview of techniques in this discussion, the topic that I will be presenting is centered around the identification of personal values and how to turn those values into motivation for the prevention of relapse. Participants will be asked the miracle question, as presented from solution-focused brief therapy. From this question, participants will envision what their lives will look like without the presence of substance use and their current legal issues. From this process, participants will then create a list of tangibles from their thoughts around the miracle question. Secondly, the participants will create another listing of the people, places, and things that are currently in their lives that are most important to them. This list will constitute what the participant stands to lose if they continue to use or relapse. The goal of this exercise is to create a tangible list of what a participant stands to gain and lose without focusing on their recovery and preventing relapse. Once the lists are created, the focus will shift to learning about a mindfulness technique called urge surfing. Participants will learn how to use this mindfulness technique to let urges to use go and stay focused in the moment. The participants will then engage in an exercise in keeping a sobriety journal for when urges arise, all while being mindful in keeping their gains and their losses lists in mind. From this, plans can be created. The result of this process is to have the participant ask themselves, is using or relapsing worth losing this? And reinforcing the statement, staying clean and sober is worth it to gain this. The end goal is to have the participants become more mindful of what they value or stand to lose or gain if they continue to relapse or use. So from a clinician's standpoint, there are several different tools we're going to use to guide our clients through this process, to come alongside them. And so the specific tools that are being covered in this presentation are the miracle question from solution-focused brief therapy. The second tool that we're going to cover will be SMART values from the Smart Recovery Toolbox. Smart Recovery has numerous tools available to us as counselors, and I have found that the SMART value set is very effective in identifying what's most important to my clients, as well as all the things in their lives that surround them that they stand to gain or lose. It's a very effective tool to use, and the client seemed to enjoy engaging in it as well. The third tool we're going to cover is the mindfulness tool of learning how to use urge surfing. Urge surfing is one of the foundations of being able to get through the rise and fall of cravings early on in recovery. And urge surfing is a very effective tool for those, especially early in recovery, in learning how to resist the urge to use and to learn what their mind and their body is doing as they're having the craving. And finally, we're going to cover how to keep a sobriety journal and to keep track of urges and using it for successful planning of prevention of lapse or relapse. And very specifically, we're going to focus on what has emerged from the mindfulness piece of urge surfing. We're not going to create an entire sobriety journal, but we're going to focus specifically on the urges. We're going to focus specifically on how we can connect those urges back up to the values that we discovered through the miracle question. This is an end-to-end process that we as clinicians can teach our clients as a very effective tool to have in their toolbox. So first, let's talk about the miracle question. So what is the miracle question? Well, the miracle question is a part of solution-based therapy, or brief therapy, and was originally created by Steve DeShazer and Insoo Kim Berg, as pictured here. The goal of the miracle question is to have clients focus not on what they have done in the past, but what they want their lives to be like now and in the future. From a relapse prevention perspective, this allows clients to begin to build internal motivation for change by being able to see what their ideal life may look like. Clients are challenged to look past their obstacles and hopelessness and focus on the possibilities. This technique can be useful for a client when they have no clear perception of what their future may look like. They may be stuck in a sequence of relapse where they have a few days clean and they relapse and everything turns awful for them again. And they get stuck in a rut of not being able to see anything any other way. The miracle question enables them to put things in the perspective of, if suddenly things were gone, well, how would my life be different? So let's take a further look at that. So what is the miracle question? Here we have the young man sitting on the ledge, pondering what life might be like without drugs. So the miracle question, as we could use it here for relapse prevention and for helping our clients look at a life without use, is that suppose tomorrow morning you discover that a miracle has occurred and you suddenly discover that the problem that brought you into treatment is solved. Because you were sleeping, you did not know that this miracle occurred. When you wake up, how will you know that this miracle has taken place? What will be different about your life? So, how is the miracle question effective? Well, so how can asking this question impact our clients? So it can help a person move beyond negative memories and focus on positive future outcomes. And these are possible future outcomes. They're not guaranteed, they are possible outcomes. It can instill the possibilities of hope by visualizing what a life in sobriety might look like without the use of substances. What will my life look like? What are the things that I can have? What are the things that I can gain? What will I no longer lose? What will my life become? It can help a person see the positive aspects of their life and also recognize that demonstrating the opposite is a warning sign for relapse. It can help a client discover what their core values are in sobriety. That's very important to this conversation too. Their core values. What do they value the most because it's these values that we're going to center on that will lead the client to discover what all of these things combined can mean together, and they'll be able to focus on them so that they prevent relapse in the future. So how do we implement this with our clients? So this is a little bit of a tricky question from the get-go. You ask the client the question. Now, it's important to stress that their addiction will not be cured and that the question is hypothetical in nature. You may get responses like, well, why do it? Why should we engage in this? If my addiction is going to still be there, what's the point? Well, in the disease model, we teach that addiction is a disease and that it's present, but we have to manage it. That's how we have to treat it. Now, that doesn't mean that the behaviors and the thoughts and the lifestyle that surrounds the addiction can't change and move forward. That's where the miracle question comes in very handy, is because we open the door to those possibilities. You know, what is my life going to look like if suddenly I woke up tomorrow and I was able to manage my addiction effectively? I was able to urge surf my cravings. I was able to not react to them. I was able to live normally. I was able to go to work. I was able to be happy, be with my family. How is that going to look? With a special emphasis on the addiction will still be there. But how is my life going to be different? So ask the client what some of the things would be that they would notice right away. Now, some of the responses I've heard in the past, and some of the responses that you may hear too, are my cravings would be gone. I wouldn't be dope sick or hungover. And this is a big one for quite a few of my heroin users about not being dope sick. That part of it is the biggest miserable content that I hear from many people, is being dope sick. Or I would have the energy to actually do something with my life. Ask the client what differences that others may see in them. And some possible responses here may be, my spouse actually smiled at me, or my boss noticed that I show up on time for work today. You know, there are other things that can come about in this area too, as you know, my family noticed that I was smiling and that I was doing stuff and that I was out of bed. I was active and engaged in doing chores, or I was active and engaged in helping. You know, things that I don't normally do because of music. And finally, ask the client how they feel. You know, how do they feel mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually? This is where motivational interviewing can elicit positive change talk, because we get to dive in deeper to the what if here. So if you made this change tomorrow, or if this change happened to you tomorrow because of this, you woke up and it was suddenly gone, what kind of changes would you see? Tell me more about that. This is where motivational interviewing can be key with eliciting more change talk with our clients. So how can we turn these visualizations into recovery-based principles for our clients? Verbalization of what oneself looks like without substance use can move a person towards recovery. By discussing what their life looks like without substance use, the building blocks of a recovery plan can be put into place. Now, it's sometimes easier said than done, but you know, what does my life look like without substance use? Well, my family is with me, my job is with me, I'm able to hang on to my cars. There's just a series of building blocks that can build up, and so the client begins to see that there is a step process out in front of them where they can climb these steps into a better life. It can help the client realize what their signs of relapse may be in a clear way. For example, if one of the answers a client gave was, I would have more energy, they might be able to see that lethargy and lack of caring might be a relapse warning sign. Hey, I actually care about things for a change, so maybe not caring is a sign that I might be in relapse. Or I got the energy today to get up and go do stuff and mow that yard and clean the garage instead of lay in bed and watch TV and eat junk food all day. Maybe getting the energy to do stuff is a sign that I'm moving away from relapse and actually getting into recovery. By discussing the positive things that can show up in their lives, the client can build positive direction for building internal motivation to change. And this is one of the big things, building internal motivation to change. So many people have external motivators. That internal motivation to change piece is oftentimes the hardest one to achieve. Okay, so possible outputs from the miracle question. People affected by our client's addiction, family, friends, and coworkers. How does my addiction change that can affect my family? How will it affect my friends? How will it affect my coworkers? How will my change and moving towards recovery, moving towards a better life, affect all of these people? And here's a list of things that could possibly change. Behaviors, how they act, how you respond, how a person reacts or responds to certain stimuli, like being yelled at or things like that. Thoughts. Thoughts can change. We're talking about things like automatic thoughts. The thoughts that take a client from 0 to 100 on the stress scale. Catastrophic thoughts, cognitive distortions. That's the kind of thoughts we're talking about here. These could possibly change. Emotions. Excuse me. Someone could go from being happy and using when they're happy. Because being happy is a common emotion when it comes to using. That state of euphoria sometimes causes a person to use. Now, through the miracle question, we can change that happiness. We can look at a path to achieving happiness without use. And we can also look at and help a client understand that the different emotions that they feel don't have to be a trigger to use out of. Daily activities. Taking a hard look at some of the daily activities. Staying in bed all day, Netflixing and chilling, not doing anything to get out of bed. It's moving towards actually doing activities in life, actually going to work, actually helping family out, actually helping a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend do things, walking the dogs. Daily activities that have suffered because of being stuck in use can suddenly look better, and they can look more achievable. And finally, motivation can change. Having no motivation to starting to have a glimmer of hope towards generating internal motivation, as well as external motivating factors. But again, I think the point to stress here is that with the miracle question, we're really focusing a lot on internal motivation for the clients. So from this list, we get a good understanding of what is important to the client. People, places, things, emotions, etc. Anything in their life that is impacted by their use. That's where we get the better understanding. So what can we do with this list generated by the miracle question? That's the million-dollar question here. What can we do with this list? And that's where we move into the second tool in our arsenal today. SMART values. Identifying values from asking the miracle question. From the process of asking our client the miracle question, we have helped them to establish the mindset of the things they can suddenly gain in their life if their problem was to suddenly disappear. Again, with the caveat, the addiction will not disappear. They will just be enabled to move more into recovery and to prevent future relapses. Many of the answers that a person can come up with, such as, My spouse will. My friends will. My behaviors will. My job will. Can all be tied to a person's value system. My spouse will love me more. My spouse will actually be able to look at me without rolling her eyes. My friends will enjoy me being around them again. My behaviors will change. They will turn more for the positive. My job will actually go more smoothly again. All of these things can be tied to a value system. By connecting a person's values to what they want for themselves in recovery, an individual can forge positive pathways to motivation to remain clean and sober and begin changing their lives. But first, we must ask the following question. What are values? I asked my clients one day, what do you value? And a lot of them just sort of scratched their heads and said, well, I value my car. I value being able to get lunch and things like that. And a couple of other answers that I got were, well, I'm not really sure. How do we define that? So the list above here is a lot of different words that center around values. Loyalty, acceptance, which is a huge one, self-respect, love, selflessness, self-control, accountability. All of these words feed into what the definition of values is. So let's look at that. What are values? SMART values, identifying values from the miracle question. So SMART recovery defines values as your ideas about what is most important to you in your life, what you want to live by and live for. In addition, values are the silent forces behind many of your actions and decisions. Values are those things where when you go to the grocery store, you're standing in front of the chocolate aisle. Do I buy or don't I buy? Well, right now I'm trying to lose weight, so I don't buy. Because you value your decision to lose weight, you're not going to buy that chocolate that day. You're making that decision from that value of staying focused on being healthy. Individuals can become more self-directed and effective when they know which values they really chose to keep and live by as an adult, and which ones will get priority over others. Now, a lot of things that come up in recovery is that I value the relationship with my spouse over the relationship with certain friends. And oftentimes these friends might be using friends. So the relationship with the spouse is identified as being more important and gets priority over the relationship with the certain friends, because the relationship with the spouse is more important. SMART values, identifying values from the miracle question. So what are some of the common values our clients might identify? Below is a list that we'll go through briefly. There's some of the values that I have heard and some of the values that I've seen. So having companionship. That could be anything from having a spouse, having friends, having a group of people around. Being loved. Loving someone. Having a close family. That could be spouse, children, extended family, mom, father, aunts, uncles, a close family. Having self-control. And self-control being having the willpower to say no, or being able to ride the urge out so that I don't have to use. Having self-acceptance. Being able to accept oneself for who they are and what they are without judgment. Being a good parent, being there for their kids, being there when their kids need them the most, instead of possibly passed out on the couch or hungover and unable to attend to their children's needs. Holding on to what you have, your home, your car, personal belongings, anything like that that comes up, making a home. And that can actually feed in from having a job to being responsible to having a relationship with the family. That all can feed into making a home. Being safe physically. A lot of use activities require a person to not be safe. So being safe physically can be taking themselves out of those physically unsafe situations and putting them more into physically safe situations, such as possibly exercise or doing something with their families, doing something that's not going to put them in harm's way. Avoiding boredom. And this is a huge one as far as use goes, because oftentimes a lot of our clients will use out of boredom because they can't think of anything else better to do. So being able to avoid boredom is one of the ways that relapse prevention can definitely be affected. Having fun. And it's important to say having sober fun, having clean fun, finding activities that don't require use, finding activities they can do with their family or that they can do with friends that move them away from the use that they have in the past. Being healthy, shifting from using habits to healthy habits, eating better, sleeping better, exercise. Being appreciated. Oftentimes that involves getting praise or getting thanked for doing things well or thanked for doing little things. Being treated fairly. And I think this one kind of speaks for itself, except sometimes that definition of fair can be sort of a loose thing for some people. But being treated fairly, being treated equally, I think is also another way to put that. And making money. Having a job, being able to provide for a home, being able to provide basically the ground floor of Maslow's hierarchy, food, clothing, and shelter. Making money kind of connects to that in our society. So SMART values, identifying values from the miracle question. And I like the quote here on the right from Roy E. Disney. It's not hard to make decisions once you know what your values are. It's simple to say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know what to do here. Well, if you have a good idea of what your values are like, then it's easier to make decisions about different things, especially when it comes to relapse prevention or when it comes to using. Our clients, if they know what their values are, if they have that good ground underneath them, I can't use today because I'm going to have all these things happen. And that's where the answer to this question comes from. So how do we connect the answers from the miracle question to a value system? If a client states, I want my spouse to trust me, we could effectively assign the values of being married or being loved to this statement. If a client states, I want to not wake up dope sick every day, we could effectively assign the value of being healthy or having self-acceptance here. If the client states, I want to show my boss I can be on time for work, we could effectively assign the value of making money or having enjoyable work, or even being appreciated. Each statement that a client makes that is tangible from the miracle question can be translated into a value or set of values. Once we have helped the client to identify their core values, we can help them assemble their list of core values, or what they stand to gain in recovery. So SMART values, assembling the list of core values. So when a client has identified their core values, they should be assembled into a formalized list. This list constitutes what they stand to gain with their recovery. A completed core values list might look something like this. I want to have a close family, a spouse, children, mother, father, extended family. I want to have self-control. I want to be able to say no. I want to be able to ride the urge out. I want to be able to say, I don't have to use in this situation. I want to be healthy, as in, I want better, healthier habits. I want to eat better. I want to sleep better. I want to get up in the morning. I want to have a normal life. I want to make money. I want to have a stable job so that I can provide for my family or provide by myself if I'm alone, have a place to live, have food to table, have transportation, basic needs connected to the I want to make money. And I want to hold on to what I have. This can be relationships with family, this could be the home, this could be anything that someone desperately wants to hold on to because it's somehow endangered because of their using. Smart values, translating the core values into gains. So what this exercise has helped the client do is to successfully identify what they stand to gain in recovery by carefully identifying their values through the use of the miracle question. We can help the client navigate the previous list of values into the following gains. I want to have a close family. Statement: by staying sober, my family will be more stable. I want to have self-control. Statement: by staying sober, I will have more control over my actions. I want to be healthy. By staying sober, I will be healthy and make healthier choices. I want to make money. By staying sober, I will do better at my job. And I want to hold on to what I have. By staying sober, I will be able to keep my job, keep my home, and my transportation. All of these pieces come together in these statements. Now, people, places, and things. This part of the values list is where values are placed into categories. The purpose of this list is to help a client connect their values to the people, places, and things that they might stand to lose if they cannot stay in recovery. This list might be comprised of the following things: people, spouse, children, friends, even themselves. I've heard numerous times from clients in the past, I lose myself when I use. Well, we can include ourselves or themselves into the people category. Places, home, social gathering places, public places, places where they go to be seen and heard, places where they have been in the past and used. Any place that is valued, such as a home or places where they can be with their friends, places where they're seen with people. And things, jobs, transportation such as cars, money and finances, because without money and finances, things like homes and transportation are difficult to come by. Connecting people, places, and things to values. So previously we looked at what a completed core values list might look like by using the SMART values exercise from Smart Recovery. So here's that list again. I want to have a close family. I want to have self-control. I want to be healthy. I want to make money. And I want to hold on to what I have. Notice that if we take a closer look at this list, we can connect each of these core values to someone or something on the people, places, and things list. Making the connection. Here's how a connected core values and people, places, and things list might look. I want to have a close family. I stand to lose my spouse and children. We would classify this under people. I want to have self-control. I stand to lose myself or my identity. We'll classify this under people as well because this person is talking about themselves. I want to be healthy. I stand to lose my health. Again, we'll count this under people and things because they're talking about themselves, but then they're also talking about other aspects of their health, so we can classify that under things as well. I want to make money. I stand to lose my job. Again, we'll put this under things because they stand to lose their job. They stand to lose their source of income. And I want to hold on to what I have. I stand to lose my home, my transportation, and my friends. We'll classify these under things and people. By connecting the SMART core values and these people's, places, and things lists together, we can help our clients assemble a master recovery list. Okay, so the master recovery list, we're putting all of these pieces together that we've talked about with the values before together now. So the master recovery list can be defined as a compilation of the following things. A listing of what a client stands to gain in recovery by remaining clean and sober. A listing of what a client stands to lose if recovery is not maintained and relapse or frequent relapses occur. The gains and losses that the client has come up with through the use of the SMART values exercise and the core values list are assembled into one complete listing. The net effect is that the gains can become losses and the losses can become gains. When the lists are put together, they can become all gains or all losses, just repeating that previous statement. This effectively shows the client what their life can look like with prolonged recovery, and also what it can look like with prolonged relapse. It's the yin and the yang of the process. So here's what a final list might look like. Master recovery list. We can help direct our clients by addressing the list the following way. If I don't keep my recovery first in my life, I stand to lose these things. If I keep recovery first in my life, I stand to gain or keep these things. Now, one thing I want to point out very specifically about this list for our clients is that recovery is in the first position, because they have to keep their focus on their recovery, or this list as it stands is not achievable, or it can't necessarily be all that achievable, because if they don't have their focus on their recovery, then relapse creeps into their lives, and these things can all be things that they can lose. So let's point this out just a little bit. Let's go through this list a little bit. If I don't keep recovery first in my life, I stand to lose my close family, self-control. I stand to lose to be healthy. I stand to lose my ability to make money. I stand to lose to hold on to what I have. I stand to lose my spouse and my children. I stand to lose myself and my identity. I stand to lose my health. I stand to lose my job. I stand to lose my home, my transportation, and my friends. It sounds very cataclysmic when all of those things are put together. It has a pretty profound impact on a person. It's like I can lose all of these things if I don't keep my focus on my recovery. So let's flip the script. If I keep recovery first in my life, I stand to gain or keep a close family. I stand to gain or keep my self-control. I stand to gain or keep the ability to be healthy. I stand to gain or keep the ability to make money. I stand or gain the ability to keep the things to hold on to what I have. I stand to gain or keep my spouse and children. I stand to gain or keep myself or my identity. I stand to gain or keep my health. I stand to gain or keep my job. And I stand to gain or keep my home, my transportation, and my friends. The list suddenly becomes very positive. All of these things that can be kept as long as focus is placed on that item in the first position, recovery first. So now we've reached the point, since we've got our recovery list, we've got the master recovery list of the items we stand to lose or gain, whether our clients stand to lose or gain, as as they work towards their plans of recovery and preventing relapse. We've got those tools assembled. We've got that list complete. So what we're doing now is we're going to convert those actions, we're going to convert those values into action by using tools for converting smart values into effective relapse prevention. Let's take a look at what tools we can use here. The first thing we want to talk about is introducing mindfulness into their recovery. So one of the tools we can assist our clients with to become more aware of their values and to move towards a complete set of relapse prevention skills is to introduce them to mindfulness. So what exactly is mindfulness? Well, there's lots of different ways to describe it, but one of the ways to describe it from one of the people that does it the most, Jon Kabat-Zinn, the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. Again, the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. Being in the moment, not judging thoughts, and not judging anything that's happening. Another definition, mindful awareness is the moment-by-moment process of actively and openly observing one's physical, mental, and emotional experiences. And this really comes out in the sense of applying it to things like urges and cravings, where physical and mental and emotional sensations can all be noticed and accounted for. This is where mindfulness will become very useful for us as we move into talking about things like urge surfing. So how mindfulness can help in relapse prevention and recovery. Here's a list of 11 things and 11 ways that mindfulness can empower our clients. Being mindful can help us manage our emotions and feelings in stressful situations. Through practice, we can learn to decenter from negative ways of being and free our minds. Mindfulness practice allows us to step back and accept our own mental processes without judgment. It can help us to cope with feelings of anxiety and even depression. Mindfulness practice in everyday life can lead us to really savor experiences from new perspectives. Practicing mindfulness in relationships, as we'll see in a second, can help us listen better, appreciate others more, and get along at work. Research suggests that mindfulness helps us in attentional processes. We may even be able to manage physical pain using mindfulness. Mindfulness practice helps us not to react instantly with emotion. We can become more aware of how we practice self-compassion, and being mindful may assist our attempts to build resilience. Because in an effective plan of recovery, resilience is one of the things in our foundations that can help build up our clients over the long term more effectively. So the tool we're going to be talking about today is urge surfing, specifically for relapse prevention. Jon Kabat-Zinn said, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf." And here we have our surfer riding the wave, and he's surrounded by urges. Some of them he's surfed pretty well, and then there's one above him that's red that's a little extra strong. And we have the onlooker down below saying, "Wow, you're riding those urges." So what are urges? An urge is an impulse to engage in an old habit, such as drinking or using. They are often experienced as physical sensations in the body. Urges are like waves in that they rise in intensity, peak, and eventually crash. Urges can usually last between 20 to 30 minutes, although sometimes it's much shorter than that. Sometimes it's 5 to 10 minutes. It just depends on the intensity of the urge. So how can urge surfing be used in relapse prevention? Well, first off, It's a heightened awareness of the sensation in a person's body. It's noticing the little things like my hair is standing on end, or I got anxious, or I feel this nervousness happening in my legs and my arms. It's learning to recognize how the urge to use manifests itself in a physical and mental sense. It's the physical sensations. Maybe someone feels hot, or maybe someone has the shakes. Maybe they're getting anxious and they're getting nervous and they want to flee the situation. And finally, an awareness of thoughts and feelings and emotions and how they're tied to the urge to use. This person's feeling depressed right now, so instead of trying to deal with their feelings and emotions, they're going to use because of it. Or someone feels like they're totally worthless, and so the only thing they can do is use because they can't see any other way for them to be. So how do we teach our clients to perform urge surfing? Urge surfing is a form of mindfulness meditation that can be done anywhere. Instruct clients to do the following steps when they begin to have thoughts, feelings, or emotions that are causing a craving to use. And here we have our person standing on the dock, looking at the ocean, and could be engaging in urge surfing, may not be. But at any rate, this person's engaging in some form of meditation. So, first off, understand and acknowledge that an urge or craving is present by saying, I am having a craving to use. Sit in a comfortable position and begin taking deep breaths. This allows the client to get into a more relaxed state by focusing on their breaths. Have the client perform a body scan and take note of the thoughts and feelings and sensations that are happening in their bodies. Like their face is hot, the heart is beating faster, person's feeling a bit restless. Have them continue to scan their bodies and take note of changes as the urge begins to pass. You might hear reactions such as, my face is getting cooler, or my breathing is getting easier, or I'm starting to feel more relaxed. Have them continue to breathe deeply until the urge completely passes. You might hear some comments such as, I'm relaxed again, or my heart is beating normally again. The tension I was feeling is gone. Ask the client to take note of all the sensations that were experienced, because they're going to be used later. So here's a visual representation of what urge surfing looks like. This came from Evolving Minds earlier this year. It's a website. So as you can see, craving intensity on the left increases. And the light blue line that goes up and then suddenly spikes down and back up and back down and back up and back down, that's the original pattern of craving. That's when a person gives into the urge and uses. They drop right back down and then the craving comes right back. Now in urge surfing, you can see how the line goes up and curves at the top and comes back down, comes back up and curves over, comes back down, and it gets shorter and shorter as it moves to the right. And this is because urges peak and then naturally drop away. With no drug reinforcement, the body learns that cravings can gradually go away on their own, a process known as extinction. So how can urge surfing be tied to SMART values? So when a person completes the activity of urge surfing, they can ask themselves the following questions. If I would have used instead of let the urge pass, who would I have affected? What would have been the immediate consequence of my use? What would have been the long-term consequences of my use? What have I gained from letting the urge pass? Well, confidence of myself and of my family. A recognition of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and feelings that arise during an urge or craving. Or a new skill in learning how to defend against future urges. Now we shift gears a little bit. So we've learned how to show our clients how to urge surf and how to remember the things that they felt and sensed, the thoughts and feelings and emotions that they've had. We've asked them to make note of that. So now we move on to creating the sobriety journal piece. So we've done the urge surfing piece, we've got the things we've been able to assemble, and now we're going to move them on and we're going to catalog them. We're going to write them down. So once a client has been able to successfully surf an urge to use, they should be able to recognize a few signs of what craving and urges look like in their bodies. Using the urge surfing mindfulness tool, the client should now be able to start a list of thoughts, feelings, emotions, and sensations they experienced while experiencing the urge to use. So what exactly is a sobriety journal? Well, a sobriety journal can help clients regularly monitor and review their recovery and progress, and write their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in a journal. The journal aids the client in reflecting on their experiences and reactions in recovery. So let's talk more about the sobriety journal. A sobriety journal can contain many different things that provide insight into an individual's recovery. A history of the individual's substance use disorder and recovery experiences. Progress reviews. What am I doing today? What am I doing good? What could I do better? Reflections on recovery and relapse prevention strategies. How am I managing the different challenges I am experiencing in my recovery? Tips and quotes. Now, this can be a combination of things like advice from others that they've heard, other group members, other members of AA or NA, quotes that they pull out of the different recovery literature, such as the Big Book of NA or the Big Book of AA, or any other daily affirmations that maybe they hear. They can write these down and have these as tips or quotes. A timeline. A historical review of a substance use disorder and a progress of recovery. Writing down events as they occur in their timeline. I used on this date. I had X number of days of sobriety on this date. Generating a timeline of their use. And finally, the daily pulse. This is the tracking of cravings, moods, thoughts, and emotions. And this is where urge surfing comes into play for building our little plans we're going to talk about. So, the sobriety journal, focusing on the daily pulse. So using the daily pulse portion of the sobriety journal for recording of thoughts, emotions, and feelings related to cravings can be an effective tool for developing an understanding of how an individual can build an effective relapse prevention plan. As urges are surfed, the tendency for the urge to use lessens over time. As we showed in that graphic before, we saw that every time the urge comes up, the peaks get smaller as they gradually move to extinction. Likewise, the sensations surrounding the urge should show a pattern of decreasing in this client's sobriety journal. Every time that they write down that they did an urge surfing activity, there's a chance that the factor of the urge should start decreasing over time. Might not right away, but as we assign a value to that urge, possibly a scale of 1 to 10, it might show up as a 10 at first, and it might be at a 10 for some time, but then over time, that number should start coming down. We should start seeing 9s and 8s and 7s and 6s. Those urges should come down. So, the sobriety journal, tracking the urges. So here is an example of what tracking mechanism for urges might look like for a client. In this case, the urge is being rated on a scale of 1 to 10. The thoughts, feelings, sensations that occurred during the urge are also noted. In addition, a notes section is available to record any other information that might be valuable. So in the first column, we have the scale on a 1 to 10. This urge was recorded as a scale of 10. What were the thoughts during this urge? I'm a failure. How long did the urge lapse? Approximately 10 minutes. What were the feelings experienced during this urge? Loneliness. What were the physical sensations? Possibly a racing heart. Now, in the notes section, we have the why. I felt this urge after being in an argument with my spouse, and it ended poorly. Now let's look at the next urge. On a scale from 1 to 10, this one was ranked a 5. Notice that it went down a bit. And the thought surrounding this urge was, I don't want to do this. The time elapsed, or how long this urge lasted, was approximately 6 minutes. The feelings surrounding this urge were frustration. And then the sensations that were experienced as a part of this frustration were shakiness and dizziness. And why did this occur? I had to go into work to talk about a problem with my boss. I got really nervous, wanted to use, and ended up being okay. Notice how tracking these urges, you get an idea of what the thoughts, feelings, sensations are like. The clients are able to start seeing what the urges actually look like. Okay, the sobriety journal, this is where we start connecting data to values. So on the previous slide, we showed the following example of the urge tracking that was given. So, again, scale of 1 to 10, we have the 10. I'm a failure. It lasted 10 minutes. I felt lonely, my heart was racing, and I felt the urge after being in an argument with my spouse, and it ended poorly. Second urge was a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. The thought was, I don't want to do this. It lasted approximately 6 minutes. I was feeling frustrated. I sensed I was shaky and dizzy, and why I had to go into work to talk about a problem with my boss. I got really nervous, wanted to use, and it ended up being okay. So each one of these recorded urges can now be tied to a SMART value. In the notes field, in this example, the client has clearly identified their spouse and their job as people and things that were affected by their urge. So now we can put this into a form that can generate a plan of action. So making the plan, SMART values and sobriety journaling coming together. This is where we work together, all these items that we've talked about start coming together, and how to have our clients use them more effectively. So from earlier in the training, we explored the master recovery list. And here is the list and the urge journal viewed together with the values identified. On the left side, you see the recovery first, and all of the things a person stands to lose or gain in their recovery. On the right, that's where we have the urges. And we had the first urge of I'm a failure because I had an argument with my spouse and it ended poorly. And the second urge about I don't want to do this. I'm frustrated, I'm shaking, I'm dizzy. I had to go talk to my boss about something I didn't want to talk about, but it ended up being okay. Notice how we're able to connect these two urges directly to values in our recovery list. So urge number 1, where they felt awful about being in an argument with their spouse, connects directly to their spouse and their children. And the second urge, where they didn't want to do what they had to do to go into work to talk to their boss about a problem, connected directly to their job. You see how these two pieces come together and how we can connect them directly to their values. Making the plan, connecting values and urges. When a client is able to connect their urges and the circumstances of an urge to their values, they can put small but effective plans in place for effective relapse prevention. This can be added to the sobriety journal as another tool for building coping skills in the future. So here is what our example looks like in a basic plan form. The urge cause, argument with my spouse. The value affected, my spouse and children. And a coping statement. I will be more mindful of my thoughts and feelings about myself when in a disagreement with my spouse. It can be worked out. And for the second urge, the urge cause was work stress. The value affected was my job. And the coping statement that can be used is I will be more mindful of stress related to work, and I will not get as easily frustrated. I can work through it. This is a simple but effective tool as it generates plans and coping statements for dealing with different urges and values, and enables the client to develop a coping statement for future issues. Now, let's have a quick review of the tools that we've covered in this presentation. Number one, we looked at the miracle question from Solution-Focused Brief Therapy, where we ask our clients, if your problem suddenly went away tomorrow, how would things be different for you? From there, we were able to take the pieces from the miracle question answers and plug them into SMART values. This generated the values and the gains. From there, we were able to move on to mindfulness, teaching our clients how to use urge surfing. From urge surfing, we were able to move on to keeping a sobriety journal and to keep track of urges to use and for successful planning of prevention of lapse or relapse in the future. So a few questions to ponder as professionals. So in what settings would this type of activity be most beneficial to practice? Inpatient groups. I have worked with this with an inpatient group before, and it was received very well by most. IOP and outpatient groups. And I have found that this activity appears to be very effective in groups where participants can share ideas, because everyone has different ideas on what they can do about different cravings, about what they can do about different situations they get in, especially in groups of people where there might be some crossover as far as friends or past backgrounds. That can be more effective for them because they actually can use these people as people they can stay connected to in recovery. This can be incorporated as part of an individualized treatment plans as clients learn about their urges, thoughts, emotions, and sensations that lead to use. This can actually be a Dimension 5 activity where people can use the logging and the sobriety journal to keep track of their urges so that they learn what their personal process of relapse looks like. More questions to ponder. How can participants practice this technique without actually having the urge to use substances? Well, we can practice with basic urges such as cravings for certain foods. Personally, Doritos work for me, and for my spouse, chocolate works for her. So keep a journal of the different urges regarding any subject. So I encourage your clients to keep track of any urge they might get. An urge to suddenly call a shopping network and order something that they don't need, an urge to run down to the store to possibly buy a whole bunch of food that they don't need, or an urge to do something very impulsive like go on an unplanned vacation and spend a ridiculous amount of money that they don't have. Sample urges to track. In addition to that, food cravings, urges to act out or get angry, urges to be spontaneous in situations that might not be the right time, like the before mentioned vacation, giving up on assignments or treatment homework. This is also a step that leads to relapse as people start moving away from being active in treatment. And making inappropriate comments to others. This can oftentimes cause guilt and shame, which can also lead a person towards relapse. In summary, first we did the miracle question, then we prepared the gains list. Then we translated the gains into SMART values for our clients. We had our clients prepare the people, places, and things, or what someone stands to lose list. That list was assembled into a master recovery list. We then taught our clients to use the mindful techniques of urge surfing to recognize urges as they arise. And finally, we created a basic values-based plan to cope with urges by recording and keeping track of urges and successful prevention of relapse or lapse in a sobriety journal. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation today and that some of the tools that were mentioned here can be more effective for you and get more tools in your toolbox. This is just an example of what some of the different things we have at our disposal for relapse prevention, such as the miracle question and SMART values and urge serving, can be put together into an effective program so that our clients have more tools at their disposal for them as they move forward in their recoveries. Thank you for listening today, and I hope you have a great day.